Thought I would share that with you. And Manny now joins us on the week. Miami comes to Texas, College Station to play A&M. I guess Appalachian State, if Miami's attention wasn't already there, they know they'll get an angry team now. That doesn't mean A&M plays any better. Manny, what's been the word so far early in Miami?
Well, obviously I think there's a lot of respect for what A&M has as far as talent and, the team that they can put on the field and the way that they can compete. I think Miami feels good about itself in terms of the way the season has started. Last game against Southern Miss, the first half was probably a little bit too tight for anybody's liking. But, as far as Mario Cristobal coming in and sort of putting a stamp on the program, getting them to become a more physical team up front, I think we've seen that the first two games against lesser competition, and now we'll get to find out what it's really like against Texas A&M.
Manny, what would you say is something that they haven't been challenged with yet, so you would know if a weakness from a year ago has been corrected or not?
Well, I mean, obviously the skill players, at Bethune-Cookman and Southern Miss, the speed of a chain in the backfield for Texas A&M, some of those playmakers at receiver, Evan Stewart, for instance, they haven't faced guys like that so far. And, the secondary at times has given up a few big plays to Bethune-Cookman and Southern Miss. Cornerbacks getting beat sort of over the top on some balls. And so now, to me, that's what I'm looking to see is, do these guys sort of rise to the occasion and play better now that they've got an opponent that has their attention, or are they going to continue to be the team that we've seen in spurts, in the secondary? I think that's a concern for Miami. And I think up front, we've seen the physicality. Like I said, Mario in the running game, the way that they wanted to sort of pound teams, bringing in extra offensive linemen to sort of be, blocking tight ends and trying to just shove the ball down Southern Miss's throat in the second half like it did on Saturday. But let's see what happens when they line up against A&M, who's got some really good defensive linemen and linebackers. Are they going to be able to push the pile the way that they did against that group? Those are the questions to me going into this game from a football perspective.
Manny, is there anything that you've picked up on or taken away from Tyler Van Dyke? I know, obviously, like you said, it's been kind of, not the best of competition the first couple of weeks, not going full throttle on the gas, but anything of note regarding QB1?
Yeah, I think he was off in the first half against Southern Miss. He'll be the first to tell you his accuracy was off, and I don't know if it's just a matter of having just a bad half. He's had those before. He had those when he first got the starting job. After Derek King went down with a season-ending injury last year, he struggled those first two starts. It was kind of reminiscent of that in the first half against Southern Miss the other day. I think the biggest thing is Miami doesn't have a deep threat, a reliable go-to established guy. When they got Charleston Rambo last year, that really opened up the offense, and they still haven't had a guy sort of emerge into that role. Xavier Restrepo is a solid slot receiver, good possession guy. I think Will Mallory, when he's playing good and not in the witness protection program, he can be one of the better tight ends in college football. There's times where he just disappears, though. So he's got guys he can throw the ball to. I don't know if he's got guys that can scare other teams. And I think that's the biggest issue right now for Tyler. And he knows it, and the coaching staff knows it. They talked about it all camp. Guys are having trouble just catching balls. Well, guess what? They're catching balls now. What they haven't done yet really is run by somebody in the secondary and make a big play. And that's important because as much as Mario wants to run the ball, we've seen enough football to know that if you can't stretch the defense, you're gonna bring 7-8 guys in the box, and then you're not going to be able to run the ball. So I think Texas A&M's got a good enough secondary to challenge them this week and to shut them down if they can't get a guy to get going.
With all due respect to anyone else in the state of Florida and UCF or whoever else is involved, but among Florida, Miami, and Florida State, we know that they've been down, some more than others. Florida had the nice win against Utah. Miami's 2-0. We'll learn a lot more about them Saturday. And Florida State had the great win against LSU on the road, basically, even though it was so-called neutral. Which of those three do you think is the first that's going to pop loose and get back at least among that top 10 or 15 among the country?
Yeah, I think it's a really hard question to answer right now because obviously Norvell's in his third year now at Florida State, so he's had a couple years to sort of get the thing going. I like what I've seen out of Florida State so far. I think he's done a great job in the transfer portal. But I think ultimately this comes down to high school recruiting and how well you can bring the best players in the country to come play for you. And right now, Miami and Florida are doing a better job of that, getting those elite players, and not having to rely so much on the transfer portal for their best players. So I think it's going to be Miami or Florida. I haven't really been able to decide yet. Obviously, Florida's got the tougher path in my mind, being in the SEC, having a Georgia, having an Alabama, having some of the other teams there that are always going to present problems for them. Right now, Clemson's, in a lot of people's eyes, maybe taking a little bit of a step back from their national championship days. So I think Miami's got the easier path to sort of coming back and maybe winning a conference championship and getting to the playoff. But it's not there's no separation yet. To me, they're all kind of in the same place.
Mm-hmm. Manny, I don't think that there's maybe outside of Clemson if they really are back to who they are, but that like you said remains to be seen, that there's a team in the ACC that's really going to run the table, challenge for a top 4 seed in the playoff this year. But does Miami have the dudes yet to win that side of the league and challenge for the conference title?
I think they do to win the Coastal. I mean, if we were ready in 2023 and you asked me, could Miami be one of the top 2 teams when the ACC goes divisionless? I would tell you no. I would think NC State or Wake Forest right now, because of what they've got at receiver, because of what they've got at cornerback. I would say those 2 teams are a little bit further ahead. But Miami's in the division structure this year, and I think they could certainly win this division. Pittsburgh, I know, lost to Tennessee. They've had a kind of 2 tough games to start, so they're pretty well tested between West Virginia and Tennessee. I didn't like what I saw out of Kadon Slovis. I thought there were times he was a little too slow holding onto the football. The offensive line gave up too many sort of big plays and sacks, etc. And so to me, Pittsburgh looks like they've taken a little bit of a step back. I know Drake Mays looked good at North Carolina, but that defense has given up a ton of points. So to me, I think the division is definitely winnable for Miami. I think there's a path, but again, you become too one-dimensional, having to rely on that running game, and the passing game doesn't come along. Then I think you got a ceiling, and that's ultimately the question I think this entire season is going to hinge on for Miami is, does that receiver emerge? Does this offense go to a new level, or do they have to sort of ground it and pound it? And is that going to be enough to win? And I don't think it is if that's the case.
Manny, what have players or coaches said about the atmosphere that they're expecting this Saturday? Obviously, that's going to be a big, feather in the cap of A&M, but how much have they talked about that? How much are they preparing for the noise at Kyle Field?
Yeah, they've been doing that for several weeks now. I think since camp started, they've had those speakers blaring and, communicating with hand signals and whatnot and expecting it to be deafening in there. So they're prepared. This isn't Mario's first rodeo. He's played in some tough places, went on the road last year and won at Ohio State in the Horseshoe.
Yep.
So he and his staff are experienced with that. And I think some of the players, you talk about a kid like Henry Parrish who came over from Ole Miss. He's obviously played at Texas A&M and been there to Kyle Field and experienced that. So, Miami's had a few kids transfer in from the SEC and other places where they played some big-time football in front of big-time crowds. And so I don't think this is a team that's going to be completely unprepared for this or anything like that. I think they'll be ready for it. But looking forward to it. This is let's face it, Miami fans don't come out and support the football team very much unless it's a national showdown, right? Unless Notre Dame's in town or Florida State somewhere in the top 10. And that stadium can be pretty quiet and at times it's kind of embarrassing, quite honestly. And this is going to be what a lot of these kids want. They want to play in front of big crowds. They want to play in front of 100,000 and have that experience. So I think there's a lot of excitement on that side.
Manny, as someone that covers college football in general as well, just outside of Miami and A&M, what so far, in your opinion, has been the biggest story in college football outside of what you cover on a daily basis?
Well, just the fact that Georgia, lost so much, right? And they look like they haven't lost anything at all. They so much of their guys went to the NFL off of last year's team, and it looks like they're better than they were a year ago, quite honestly. I think that was a little surprising, and they look like the favorite to win the championship in my eyes. And then obviously what Texas just did to Alabama, pushing them to the limit, the fact that Alabama's receivers struggled so much, to kind of create plays in that game. And so, I think so far those have been the two sort of biggest developments. But it's so early. There's so much more that we have to see. And I know there's going to be some more important storylines to develop here in the next few weeks.
Manny, thank you. Appreciate it. Our go-to guy covering Miami for theathletic.com, Manny Navarro, sick on 365 Radio and 365 Sports. When we come back, we'll start the 4 o'clock hour.